coolant flange on the back of the head, this plastic piece here. We always replace them with OEM due to the quality and the fact that it's hard to get to. We don't want to put something cheap in there. So this is 2 bolts and an O-ring. So we always change these out usually from the top. You can see it real well from the bottom, so we're gonna go ahead and do it while we have the transmission out. But now you can at least see it, you know, at a good view in the car. Also, when we're in here, when we change the flange, we always change an O-ring and clip right here. And generally it's smart to change this heater hose because that O-ring can eventually leak. This one actually is swollen from oil leaks above it, which is also a common thing. So regardless, usually when we do the flange, we like to do the heater hose, the clip and O-ring, especially with the age of these cars, just to make sure the cooling system's good to go. And like I said before, you generally do these from the top. We luckily have the trans out, so now you can see it firsthand on how fun it is to try to get to this from the top. This one though, like I said, has oil on it, and you can see it's from, there's an O-ring on the pump. So there's a pump driven by the camshaft that actually creates vacuum to help run the brake booster and other such things. So there's an O-ring after this thing's unbolted with these Torx bolts, it pops out, there's an O-ring. This is pretty easy to do from the top. I mean, that's how we do them. So we'll do that later when we deal with stuff up top. There's also this gasket here for the timing chain cover because there's a chain that goes between the 2 camshafts, and that's also where the chain tensioner is located. So we'll do that later once we start working on the top end of the car. We'll change this gasket here that you can see is leaking, and we'll do the tensioner and we'll do the O-ring on the vacuum pump. So that's why this hose is oily. So right now we're gonna change this hose, change the flange, we're gonna change the clip, we're gonna change the O-ring, and you know, pretty soon before we get a major, you know, swollen hose again from oil, we're gonna swap it out. We're also, while we're in here, since we plan on driving this car a lot, we're gonna swap out this other hose. All these items we stock, they're on our website. If you have issues finding them, go ahead and give us a call. Another cool thing, once this is apart, we gotta see a lot of the other parts that have been neglected. It's part of why we bought this car. It has 152,000 miles. It's just your normal run-of-the-mill commuter car, bone stock, nothing's ever been done to it. So when we got it up in the air, we also found coolant by the crank seal. By the crank, you see the pinkish residue. So it tells you the water pump's leaking. This is a do not drive your car, turn it off, stop driving type deal, because if the water pump bearing completely fails due to the coolant going through it, you'll lose the timing belt and therefore you will bend valves. So we already planned on getting this car fully up to speed when we bought it. We bought it so cheap with a blown trans. We were gonna put a lot of new parts in it, upgrade things. So it's actually fine with us that it's already leaking because we have to do it anyways. So we'll be doing a timing belt and water pump and seals later. And another thing you'll see is the motor mounts. They're blown, which is common. So the stock ones are full of hydraulic fluid, and they also have an aluminum lower. So we'll change these out because when they blow out, they can collapse and actually make the car less smooth. We commonly replace them with 034 street density rubber mounts because they're more durable and they're still rather streetable. And the 034 mounts have a steel lower versus the aluminum. So we'll be doing those. We would have done those regardless. So the fact that the one's blown on the main Torx side, on the passenger side, isn't a big deal. We'll also be doing a snub mount. As you can see, it's already fallen apart. It's good to tighten this up and get a nice polyurethane snub out in there, so we'll be throwing that in there at some point. But you can see it, it's pretty deteriorated and cracked, and if you look how soft it is, it really doesn't do anything. Okay, here's the parts we took out of the car when we pulled the transmission. You'll see the trans mount, they're original, they're oil soaked. They're pretty soft. There's no major damage on these, but once again, it's worth the upgrade. So we're gonna go ahead and put our, we make spacer kits that make the 034 density line B5 mounts work. It's available on our site as a kit, or you can get the spacer and get the mounts of your choice. So we'll be throwing those in while the transmission is out. Okay, so now that we got the parts out of the car, here's the flange. You can see what happens. The plastic just deteriorates with age, so it doesn't hold the seal as tight as it used to be. It's eaten through right here, so it can't keep the pressure outward to keep the seal. So that's why the flange is leaking. You'll see the O-ring clip here for the sensor, so that's gonna end up going over there. If you wanna change the sensor now, yeah, it's a good time. We stock it. They're not a big failure. It's just up to you. It's not much more. So there's that original O-ring clip. These are a common leaking item anyways. And then here is the heater hose one was swollen, the one we like to change anyways. This one actually popped apart. So this one actually lost the seal and the clip. So it's usually good to just buy this hose. And like I said, we stock it. Here's the other hose to the left.
that really wasn't too bad, but I'm in there, the transmission's out of the car, and then here's all the new components.
A lot of times on the metal pipe, you usually have to pull the metal pipe back to give you access. We're able to sneak it and pull it out because the transmission's out. But generally, you're gonna have to pull this out this to the left, and a lot of times this hose generally won't stick that tightly to the plastic. And even if that did, you're gonna destroy the hose. And then on the metal side, it will stick so good it's almost glued on, and then you gotta cut it apart. So we almost always have to change that when we do it in the car from the top. Because obviously the only reason we're able to do it this way is because we have the transmission out. So be aware of this hose. So if you wanted to make sure you could do the job in a given weekend without having to, visit anything last minute or not be able to get the part because you're not nearby anywhere that maybe stocks it, which not everybody stocks this stuff, you'd want to get this hose right here that attaches to the flange and then the pipe on top of the flange and on top of the heater hose, and then the O-ring and clip.